Okay, let's dive in. Imagine this. You're looking at research papers, right? Different universities, different authors, different cities maybe, and you spot the exact same typo. Not just any typo, but a really weird specific one. It sounds, I don't know, almost like a clue in some kind of academic mystery novel.
It really does. It's fascinating how something so tiny, a single misplaced letter, can actually be a signal flare for a much bigger, maybe systemic problem.
Exactly. And that's what we're getting into today. We've been looking at the situation. It came to light pretty recently, around late May 2025. It's this peculiar issue in Indian academia. Some people are even calling it a copy-paste conundrum.
Right. And that tiny typo seems to be one of the weirdest threads leading right into it.
Hmm.
So I think our goal here, our mission for this deep dive, is to really unpack that. What do these identical errors actually tell us? Why isn't it just about, bad spelling?
Yeah, why does it point to something deeper about academic integrity?
Exactly. And what does it all mean for how much we can trust the knowledge being produced? Not just in India, but really everywhere.
Right. So we've been sifting through the reports, trying to figure out, okay, where did the story come from? Is this totally new, or is it like part of a pattern we've actually seen bits of before?
And crucially, connecting the dots so you listening understand why this isn't just some obscure academic issue, why it should actually matter to you.
Think of us as trying to navigate this maze of information with you. We're spotting the important bits, linking things up. We've looked at the details, and honestly, it's quite a story that unfolds.
So let's start with the core finding. What actually came out? The thing that really grabbed our attention was this report about multiple research papers,
Multiple, yeah.
all containing these weirdly similar grammatical mistakes. Not just one paper, but several. Different authors, two different places.
And the examples they mentioned were, well, pretty striking. Like seeing the exact same misspelling, I think the one reported was print instead of print.
That's the one, yeah.
Appearing in papers from totally different researchers at different institutions. Not just once, but like consistently.
And this is where it gets really, really suspicious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that kind of identical specific error, the chances of that happening randomly are incredibly low.
Astronomical, practically.
Right. If two people make a typo independently, they usually make different typos. Seeing the exact same unique mistake, it strongly, strongly suggests that text was just copied, lifted directly from one source to another, errors and all.
It's almost carelessly revealing, like a burglar dropping their ID at the scene. A really lazy way to cover your tracks if that's what was happening.
And it feels important here to just pause and remember what academic plagiarism really is. It's much more than just, borrowing a few sentences without quotation marks.
Oh, definitely.
It's fundamentally about taking someone else's original ideas, their data, which might have taken years to collect, their analysis, their intellectual work, and passing it off as your own.
It's like showing up to the potluck with a fancy store-bought dessert and insisting you slaved over a hot oven all day.
Exactly. And in academia, where everything is built on trust and credibility, that's a major violation, a fundamental breach.
So how did these specific cases, the ones flagged by the identical typos, actually get discovered?
Well, from what we understand, these papers were flagged during peer review. That crucial stage where research gets scrutinized by other experts in the field before it gets published.
The gatekeepers, sort of.
Pretty much. They check the science, the methods, and yes, the originality. It seems that during this process, maybe helped by software tools they use now, these identical mistakes just jumped out at someone. They raised the alarm.
Okay, so that leads us to trying to confirm if this is, a real pattern or if it's a weird anecdote. The initial report, where did that come from?
Our understanding is it came from the Telegraph India, which is, a well-respected major English language newspaper there, known for pretty rigorous reporting, long history. So when they publish something like this, it carries weight. It's not just some random blog post.
Right. And when you start digging a bit, does it look like this is completely out of the blue?
Yeah.
Or have there been signs of this kind of thing before?
Well, that's the thing. It seems pretty clear this isn't an entirely new issue.
Yeah.
We found references to studies, one from back in 2019, I think, suggesting a noticeable percentage of papers coming out of India showed signs of plagiarism.
Okay.
And there have been more recent reports, too, even last year, 2023, talking about universities grappling with academic misconduct scandals, issues with oversight. And remember that big retraction case in 2020, something like 65 papers, mainly in biomedical fields, were pulled because of issues like duplicated images, reused text.
I do remember hearing about that, yeah.
And then in 2022, There were those reports about paper mills being busted companies, literally selling pre-written academic papers. And surprise, surprise, those papers were often full of errors or just stitched together from plagiarized stuff, very similar to what's being described now.
So the fact that these specific typos, like print, got caught, it actually makes sense in today's environment, doesn't it, with the technology journals use?
Exactly. Journals are increasingly using quite sophisticated plagiarism detection software. Tools like Turnitin, Authenticate.
Yeah.
They're common now.
And they don't just look for big chunks of text?
No, not at all. They can spot patterns, identical phrasing, even consistent weird errors like misspellings or awkward sentences that showed up across different submissions. So this kind of, frankly, sloppy copy-pasting. Technology makes it much easier to flag during routine checks, even if a human reviewer initially misses it.
Oh, okay. And the report itself, did it name the specific papers or researchers involved?
No, it didn't. And that's pretty typical in initial reporting, often to avoid interfering with any potential investigations or, legal issues.
Right, makes sense.
But even without the specific documents, the pattern described these identical, unusual errors fits perfectly with how plagiarism gets detected in modern academic publishing. It really suggests this isn't just some bizarre one-off coincidence.
Yeah.
It feels like part of a broader issue of questionable practices that just happened to get caught this time because, well, the method was pretty clumsy.
It might not be the smoking gun without the actual papers in front of us, but
Okay.
it's a very strong whiff of smoke, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. A very strong whiff.
Which brings us to, I think, the really crucial part for everyone listening. Why should we care? You might hear this and think, okay, so some academics cut corners. Unfortunate, maybe, but is it really a big deal?
But when you connect it to the bigger picture, the implications are huge. This isn't just about a few researchers being lazy. It strikes at the heart of how we build knowledge.
How so? What's the fundamental problem here?
Well, think about what research is for. It's meant to be the foundation for progress, right? In medicine, technology, policy, pretty much everything.
Sure.
When researchers plagiarize, they fundamentally break the trust in that foundation. If you can't trust the data in a paper or the conclusions someone draws, how can anyone else reliably build on that work?
Right. How can you make decisions based on it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially in critical fields. Think about medicine, a drug trial based on copied, maybe even fabricated data. Or engineering a bridge design using calculations from an unreliable plagiarized source. The real-world consequences could be incredibly serious, dangerous even.
It's like finding out the chef preparing your meal used spoiled ingredients. It doesn't just taste bad. It could actually harm you. It taints the whole process.
Precisely. And then there's the reputational damage. India has fantastic research institutions,
Ugh.
brilliant scientists doing genuinely original work.
Absolutely. World-class stuff.
But recurring stories like this, reports about plagiarism, they can seriously harm the reputation of the entire Indian academic system on the global stage. It can make international journals, other universities, funding bodies, maybe more skeptical about submissions from India.
It's like being that kid in class who keeps getting caught cheating, right? Even when you do honest work later, people are suspicious. Nobody takes you quite as seriously.
Yeah, it creates a cloud. And let's not forget the waste. Research costs a lot of money. Government funding, institutional funds, taxpayer money often.
Huge investments.
And every plagiarized paper represents a waste of that money. Plus, think about the time and effort of the honest peer reviewers, the journal editors, often working for free, essentially, donating their expertise.
That's a really good point. Their time is valuable, too.
It's like paying a premium price for a concert ticket, getting really excited, and then realizing the star performer is just lip-syncing the whole time.
You feel cheated, right? It's a waste of your investment and time because the product isn't authentic.
And maybe the biggest impact.
Yeah,
It just kills innovation, doesn't it?
it really does. Originality, genuine discovery, that's the engine of progress. If the focus shifts from creating new knowledge, doing the hard work of original research,
Yeah,
to just finding clever ways to repackage old stuff.
exactly. If it becomes about finding shortcuts, copying existing work, well, then real innovation slows down. It might even grind to a halt in some areas. We just end up recycling the same ideas instead of pushing boundaries.
It's like Hollywood just deciding to remake the same superhero movie over and over again instead of trying a new story. Familiar, maybe, but not exactly moving things forward.
And honestly, just stepping back, it's almost funny in a dark way. India is globally famous for Jagad, right?
Yeah.
That ingenious, resourceful way of finding clever workarounds and solutions.
Yeah, making things work against the odds.
So you'd think if people were going to plagiarize, they'd at least find a more creative way to do it.
Yeah.
But no, copying typos.
Yeah.
It suggests a level of, well, not just laziness, but maybe a lack of thinking things through.
It really does. Which leads to the big question, why? Why does this happen? It seems too simple to just blame individuals for being unethical. There have to be deeper reasons, right? Systemic things.
Absolutely. It's rarely just about bad actors. One huge factor, and this isn't unique to India, is the intense publish or perish culture in academia.
Ah, yes, the pressure cooker.
Exactly. There's immense pressure on researchers, on faculty, to publish frequently. Often, the number of publications matters more for promotions, funding, tenure, than maybe the quality or the actual impact.
So quantity over quality becomes the game.
It can, yeah. And that creates this high-stakes environment where writing original high-quality research, which is genuinely hard and takes a lot of time, might seem less appealing than finding a shortcut. Copying?
Yeah.
Well, that looks quick and easy, especially under pressure.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Another major issue seems to be training, or rather the lack of effective training, especially for younger researchers or students.
Training in what, specifically?
In the real nuts and bolts of academic writing, proper citation, research ethics, they might not fully understand what counts as plagiarism beyond blatant copy-paste. Things like improper paraphrasing, mosaic plagiarism, failing to cite the source of an idea even if you change the words.
The nuances can be tricky.
They can. And if you haven't been properly taught, it's easy to make mistakes. It's kind of like giving someone keys to a car, but never really teaching them the detailed rules of the road or defensive driving. Accidents are more likely.
And oversight, is that part of the problem?
Definitely seems like it.
Yeah.
The academic system is vast. Trying to monitor every single paper, every thesis across thousands of institutions. It's a massive challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Many places might not have the best plagiarism detection tools, or they might have policies on paper but lack the resources or maybe the will for consistent enforcement. So work can slip through the cracks at the university level, and it only gets caught later by a journal with better systems.
Like trying to herd cats, but on a national scale.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And some people also suggest there might be cultural factors involved in some context. Well, in educational systems that historically placed a very high value on rote learning, memorization, reproducing information accurately, the concept of intellectual property and mandatory original contribution, which is very central to the Western academic model, might be understood differently.
Interesting, Paul.
Some students or researchers might, perhaps subconsciously, see reusing or adapting existing text as a valid way to demonstrate learning or to build on what's known without fully internalizing the strict rules about attribution and originality.
Like thinking it's okay to use your neighbor's prize-winning recipe verbatim because you learned it from them, maybe?
Something like that. It's a complex cultural nuance, perhaps. And then, of course, there's technology. The internet.
The great enabler and the great temptation.
Exactly. Access to information is incredible now, but it also makes copying and pasting trivially easy. Without strong checks, clear ethics, and real deterrence, the path of least resistance is just right there. Click, click, done.
Like an unguarded cookie jar.
Precisely. Especially when you're stressed and facing deadlines.
And we have to come back to it. If you are going to take that risk, why copy the typos? It's just bafflingly careless, isn't it?
It really is. You'd think a minimum effort would involve reading it through, maybe changing a few words, running a spell check, but no, it suggests a certain lack of critical engagement, maybe, even with the text being copied.
So what happens when someone does get caught? When these typos or other evidence leads to a finding of plagiarism, what are the consequences?
They can be pretty severe. If a paper is already published, the most common outcome is retraction.
Which sounds serious.
It is. It's basically the academic equivalent of a public shaming. The journal officially withdraws the paper, publishes a notice saying it's retracted, often stating why plagiarism, bad data, whatever. It's a permanent black mark on your record.
Ouch. Okay. What about the individual's career?
That can take a huge hit. Researchers caught plagiarizing can face disciplinary action from their university that could range from a formal warning to suspension, losing grant funding, or even getting fired. It can effectively end an academic career. Trying to get another research position or major grant after a confirmed plagiarism finding is incredibly difficult. Your reputation is just gone.
And the institutions, do they face consequences too?
They can, yeah. Universities linked to repeated or high-profile scandals often face scrutiny. Funding agencies might ask questions, demand stricter oversight. The government might get involved. It reflects badly on the institution's standards.
Kind of like when your kid gets in trouble at school and suddenly the principal wants to talk to you about your parenting.
A bit like that, yeah. The whole family, or in this case, the institution, comes under the spotlight.
And do these incidents lead to changes, like new rules or policies?
Often, yes. High-profile cases tend to be catalysts. We mentioned earlier, partly due to past scandals, India introduced mandatory plagiarism checks for PhD theses and dissertations back in 2018. So this current situation, these reports, it could definitely push for even stronger measures. Maybe better ways for journals and universities to share information when they detect issues. Or maybe truly effective mandatory ethics training that isn't just a tick box exercise.
So looking forward, how can this be fixed? It sounds like a complex problem with deep roots.
It is. And it needs systemic solutions, not just blaming individuals. One key thing is better training right from the start. Mandatory, engaging training on research ethics, proper citation, academic integrity. Like driver's ed for researchers, you learn the rules before you get on the road.
And the tools.
Institutions need to invest in robust plagiarism detection tools and, crucially, use them consistently. Not just for student theses, but maybe even faculty work before it's submitted externally. Like installing good security systems, they deter bad behavior and help catch it when it happens.
What about the publish or perish pressure? That seems like a root cause.
That's a huge one. There needs to be a cultural shift, moving away from just counting publications towards valuing quality, impact, real originality. Judging the research on its merits, not just its quantity, that's harder, but essential.
Like judging a chef on the taste of the food, not just how many plates they churn out.
Exactly. And mentorship is vital too. Experienced, ethical senior researchers guiding early career colleagues through the pressures, reinforcing the importance of integrity. Having a good guide can make all the difference.
And maybe even a shift in education itself.
I think so. Moving away from just rote learning towards emphasizing critical thinking, analysis, innovation, teaching students how to develop their own ideas and arguments, not just how to repeat or reassemble others.
Teaching them to cook, not just follow a recipe.
Precisely. Building that foundation of intellectual independence.
And maybe, just for fun, journals could introduce a new award category. Most brazenly obvious plagiarism, including typographical errors.
Huh. The ultimate public shaming. Maybe a badly photocopied trophy to go with it.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive into the so-called copy-paste conundrum, sparked by these reports of identical errors, it really highlights how complex these issues of academic integrity are, doesn't it?
It really does. You see the links between systemic pressures, like publish or perish, individual choices, gaps in training or oversight, and the very real consequences. It undermines trust, it wastes resources, and it can genuinely hinder progress.
And importantly, this isn't just some internal academic squabble. For you listening, as someone who consumes information news reports based on studies, health advice, technological claims, understanding how research can sometimes be compromised, it makes you a sharper, more critical thinker.
Absolutely. It encourages you to look a bit closer at the sources behind the headlines, maybe to ask more questions, and to expect accountability from the people and institutions producing knowledge.
So, maybe the next time you read about a major research finding or hear a claim based on studies show, take just a second, ask yourself, does this feel truly original? Does it seem rigorously done? Or is there a chance it could be? Well, a skillfully presented recycling of something else, maybe even with a few revealing errors left in.
What stands out to you in this whole discussion? And thinking about the knowledge you rely on every day, what responsibility do you feel we all have in making sure it's built on a foundation of real integrity?